Well, folks, in today's video, we're going to be working on this vintage Baltimore and Ohio Gp7 or Gp9 locomotive. I'm not really sure which kind it is, but either way, I found this locomotive in a massive lot of equipment from the 1950s, and when we tested this thing, it didn't seem to run. The whole drive was completely seized. I'm not really sure why. If I were to take a guess, I think it's dry lubricant, but we'll have to find out. This locomotive looks suspiciously like an Athearn, but it's not. It's from a manufacturer I've never personally heard of called Olympic Express, and it's a Japanese manufacturer apparently. So I don't really know what we're up against here, but I figure we'll just crack it open and see if we can get it running once again. It did seem to be picking up power, which is a good sign, but yeah, as for the rest of the drive, who knows what's going on. Let's go test it out. So just to show you all what it's currently doing, we'll just put it on the track here, and I'll give it a little bit of voltage. Not currently seeing anything, however. Yeah, so this is exactly what it was doing last time. You can see we've got current draw, and you can hear the motor going, but it does not want to move, and if we continue doing this, we're just going to end up burning out the motor. So currently something's clearly locking this thing up, so we'll bring it over to the workbench and we'll see if we can correct whatever that is. I'm interested to see what kind of drive this thing has. As I mentioned, this reminds me a lot of an Athearn locomotive, so I suspect it will be quite similar. And as a matter of fact, it is. I see some subtle differences, but other than the motor, this all looks almost identical. They definitely were inspired by some of the designs at the time. Now, anyways, we'll try to turn this over manually, and yeah, I can't do that. I mean, that should be completely loose, so I'm guessing that there's a problem in one of, if not both, the gearboxes. It's not impossible that the motor itself is seized. I have seen situations where moisture has gotten into these locomotives and it actually locks up the bearings, but I'd say that most of the time it's the gearboxes. So I guess we'll just try to take this thing apart and see if we can sort it out. So there's the first gearbox taken apart. Surprisingly, that actually seems to be turning just fine, so I don't think that this is the problem. How about the worm gear itself? Well, that's okay as well. We'll try taking the other one off. It's possible something's wrong in here. This one's turning fine. And lo and behold, that's fine too, so it does not seem that the gearboxes were the problem. I guess we've got our work cut out for us here. I noticed these two screws on the bottom. I'll try removing both of those, and hopefully the motor will pop out, and then we'll be able to try to get it unstuck. There we go. Wow. That is one jammed motor. So I have seen this a couple times, but it is rare, so I'm guessing that maybe this was flooded at some point. It doesn't look horrible though. Usually everything would be a little more oxidized, so I'm just guessing this thing is just not run in an extremely long period of time. Bit of moisture got in these bearings and it completely locks the whole thing up. So I think at this point what we're going to try to do is get some oil, a little bit of penetrating oil on both the bearings, and I'll just keep trying to mess around with it, and hopefully it will unseize. It's possible the armature itself is rusted in place. I have seen that a couple times, but we'll try to fix up the bearings first and see if that will get it going. So I just quickly went and got myself a can of liquid wrench. I find this stuff works pretty well for getting stuff unseized. You could use a bit of WD-40 or something like that. Doesn't really matter. I mean, I know this stuff is not the best for lubricating a model train, but you're dealing with old stuff like this, you just need to get something unseized. It usually will get the job done. So we'll just get a little bit on there. Try not to get it on the commutator, or if we do, clean it off because it will mess that up really quick. So we'll just let that soak in for a few minutes, maybe an hour, and then we'll come back to this, and hopefully it will have worked its magic. If not, we're going to have to dig a little deeper into this thing, which I don't really want to do, but if it gets there, it gets there. Well, it's been about 20 minutes. I think we'll have another go at it here. Yeah, there we go. We got it unseized. Check that out. Just amazing just how much a little bit of penetrating oil can fix things like this up. So I think now I'll get my power pack out. We'll test to make sure this motor is actually working. I'm guessing it is. I mean, those windings were definitely trying to turn this thing over. We'll clean the commutator. We'll clean and throw a little bit of fresh lubricant in the gearboxes, and hopefully this thing will run. So let's see if this motor still has any life left in it. No problem. That's with about half power, and it's still got some torque left in it too, so this is a very healthy motor, despite being locked up like that. So that's wonderful to see. We'll now service the commutator. To do so, I'm just going to shave down a toothpick. A lot of people are always asking what I use to clean out the commutators, and usually it's just a plastic toothpick, but a wooden one will work just as well, and I just want to kind of demonstrate that here. And now we'll just go over it with a fiberglass pencil. That motor looks just about good as new. Now we'll just have a look at the rest of the drive here. Honestly, this all looks very good. Usually when working on these older pieces of equipment, I like to go through and clean everything up, but honestly, I'm not really seeing any dirt or hair in this thing, so I'm thinking we just add a little bit of fresh oil. It already seemed to be turning pretty well even without the fresh lubricant, so I think we'll be able to get away with this just this once. Anyway, we'll just get a little bit of oil here on the bearings, and that all seems pretty good. And now we'll just quickly do the same thing on the other truck. One thing to note is that the bushings have a flat spot. You want the flat spot basically to be facing like that. I don't know why they made it like this. I guess they just don't want the bushing spinning around, but yeah, it's important that you index those. Otherwise, this will not go back together, which is what I had to figure out the hard way with the other truck. So here's the most fun part, and that's getting these little drive links in. Let's quickly see if this thing is actually in working order. There we go. Okay, that seems good enough for me. Let's see if this bucket of bolts will actually fire up for us here. Oh. And it's moving. Yeah, I think we can call that a runner. Serenity! Well, it seems to be running all right. I think I'll let it run for about 5 minutes just to kind of break in, and I'll probably just clean the wheels up too after that, just so that we can really get this thing running well, and then after that, why don't we actually try to pull some cars with it, because I bet this locomotive has decent pulling capacity with the die-cast chassis. Seems to be catching on something over here, so we're going to try to catch it. I saw some sparks. I wonder if the coupler's hanging a bit too low. It does appear that the brake hose is hanging lower than even the flanges, so it's really no surprise that that thing is getting caught up on the switches, so we'll have to sort that out. It's not the coupler that I think's the problem, though. I've just noticed that the whole back of the locomotive is kind of bent. Yeah, it's definitely bowed a little bit here, so I'm guessing somebody must have dropped this thing at some point. See if we can kind of bend it back here. These metals are kind of soft, so I gotta watch it because it might just snap off if I'm not careful. Okay, it's not perfect, but I think that that should be good enough. I really don't want to test my luck because there's definitely a weak spot here and here. Let's try to tweak that coupler a little bit so that it can take those freight cars to where the grass is green and the girls are pretty. That's pretty good right there. This air hose should be more than high enough to clear all the switches, so that's all good. I'm just going to focus on actually getting those wheels all shined up. Alright, I think this thing is ready to hit the rails again. Went and got a train all assembled, so now let's see what this thing can do. So the diesel seems to be running pretty darn well. There's just one more thing I want to check out, and that's the low speed. So we're just going to bring it around here and slowly drop the voltage, and we'll just see how low it can go. So yeah, it seems to kick out right there at about 2.5 volts. It's actually still moving a little bit. It's just cogging really badly. So it's, you know, not the greatest slow runner, but for a locomotive of its age, this really is not that bad. It's actually quite impressive because it's not stalling or losing power. So even though it's not perfect performance, we at least know that the motor and drive, as well as the whole electrical system, are in very good condition. So yeah, I'm very happy with those results. Well folks, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. I certainly enjoyed working on this thing, and I couldn't be happier with the results. You know, here's a locomotive which at the beginning couldn't run whatsoever under its own power, and by the end we've got it pulling an entire train, possibly for the first time in 30 years. And given how healthy the drive seems to be, I think it could probably run for many more decades to come. So I think we'll finish things off there. Thanks for watching, everyone.